All right, we are live
Sweet.
and we are recording as well. Okie dokie. All right. Well, GA, everybody. Welcome to what's going to be another great DevNTell, now live from YouTube. So if you didn't know, DevNTell is a 30-minute window for members of the DAO to showcase something they've been working on or are passionate about. So it's going to be an awesome project you've been working on, unit testing best practices, smart contract goodies, so on and so forth. Basically, if you've got a passion for something, this is your opportunity to share with the community. And today, I am excited to reintroduce to you Drew from Corgis.xyz. So if you recall, when we started season one, uh, Drew was actually the first person to present. So I'm happy to have him again kick off season two series of Devon Tells for us. So take it away, dude.
Yeah, so my name is Drew. I'm from Corgis.xyz, and I'm trying to create a product. If you want to know a little bit of background about myself, I am an engineer, but also an instructor. So I teach around the states, globally, and then I provide pretty much taught at like elementary school, middle school, high school, university, and then boot camps. And then I try to be more into the ed tech space, but provide something really interesting for a lot of users and try to be a little bit more innovative because I think innovation needs to be a lot more accessible in this age. So I'm going to have a really pretty cool presentation about like what my product was and from season one. So then now you can see in season two what I've been up to, and then one of my plans, and then maybe I'll come back in season three if needed. So let me present, and then let's see how this goes. So let me share my screen. Sweet. So if you could see, just for verification, can you see my screen? Just making sure.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. Sweet. Yep. So pretty much, I'll do a recap from season one, and it was trying to my goal pretty much from the years was like make code cute and informative. So over the years, these were kind of like my logos. I was a really bad designer, and then as I think people will have like a quote, like people will not, they won't talk about your failures. They will talk about your successes. So for me, I had a lot of failures. So I started drawing, and then started thinking like, well, I need to make a really good brand. So I use Corgis, and that's kind of like the company and what it stands for. Just a furry animal, a dog that's compassion, that could be your coding friend or assistant. And over the years, it's been like 4 iterations, kind of going through. I was trying to refine the product and try to see that, can I make a brand for coding a little bit, or sigil for coding a little bit more digestible? So this was the outcome. So I started going kind of like very terrible and started improving along the way. And that took some time in figuring out that I wasn't a designer at the beginning, but I tried to learn as I go. So that was kind of like, it was called Coding Corgis, and it was Code with Corgis, and now it's Corgis.xyz. So names change, but the concept and the pretty much meaning started becoming a lot easier for people later on. And then I started thinking like, well, and I spotted stuff like every technology that you learn, there's always going to be a mascot. So I wanted a mascot for coding to provide people with just, a lot of people have imposter syndrome when learning this stuff. So I wanted to be like a pretty much a guide to help them out. So for example, started making like small products, and these were just stickers. And I didn't think that people will buy stickers that are cute, but a lot of the female devs would love it and they buy it. And a lot of people who wanted to learn it, they would just buy it just because it's cute. And then underliningly, you could see the curly brackets or the parentheses. They will see that it's a sigil for coding. Yeah, so if you're going through that, you can see that later on, I wanted to provide a mascot. And that took some time. That was not like learning from like computer science. It didn't teach me how to brand stuff. It didn't teach me how to market stuff. So instead, I had to learn on the go. So kind of like the roadmap to the pretty much the beginning of the story was that when I was an elementary school teacher for programming, a little girl pretty much asked me a question. And the question was, am I dumb? And the reason why I asked that question shocked me was that for me, I said no, but I don't know why you think that way. She actually said that her parents bought her a book, and that book actually was Coding for Dummies. And she internalized it really badly. But the book right here provided things that like, well, it sets the standard. what is going to be your culture and what's it going to be is based on like beginning programming for dummies. I don't think people would like internalize it that way, but little kids do. So as an example, we want to make sure that we could be inclusive as well as very open and transparent, that like you're not dumb, but you could actually do this. And a lot of times you can see later on, we have like a very skewed data of like how many guys to girls. And you want to make sure that you have like a 50-50 split, right? Because then we won't have a lot of people into the table, and they will create the decisions going forward. So I started thinking and coding, and this is me actually, and I'm always in the mascot suit. So I try to be a CEO, but also try to think like this is like an Iron Man suit, but it's extremely hot and my dye in there. So I started thinking of an idea like, okay, well, I'm going to create some mascot, and the little girl loved corgis because one's pretty much is a really, corgis means dwarf in Welsh. And dwarves build stuff. So if you're kind of curious, like why? And then also another question, a follow-up question is people ask me, like, do you have a corgi? Yes, I used to, passed away. So I used to have corgis as well. And the debate was, should I buy another corgi or buy a suit to or a mascot suit? And I bought a mascot suit because I think later on this year, I will be making video content in that suit. Kind of weird though, but so I started thinking of like maybe creating a content and a brand. And what happened was I started posting a Medium, do like interview questions and try to make it more interactive. These were all animated GIFs and comics. And then it started becoming more like, okay, I'm going to do Instagram and try that out and see if people like it. And then it started becoming interesting enough. So it was like, okay, I wanted to start doing animated comics and see that go. And then I started thinking like, well, what if I try to build like a giant mascot suit, and started asking like, can I build something like very similar to this, right? And see how that would go. And everything I tried was trying to scream up in the air and say, I'm significant up to the clouds and say like, is this even worth it? But it seemed that like, as I progressed through, I think it did. And the kind of people think of pretty much Corgis.xyz, like it's like a Duolingo, not for language. Like people don't understand that programming languages are now kind of like in this modern age, a language. And as more things like AI tools gets through, we need to make sure that we understand it before we just like kind of scary that people will trust more about AIs than they will trust their humanity and their humans. So optimizing humans is really hard, but optimizing kind of like your process or AIs are pretty much seamless as more data goes through. And I think we need to be a little bit more transparent and figure out that later on we need to like trust people. That's a little bit more ethical for me. So then later on I started thinking like, well, I wasn't in the Web3 space, but now I think it needs to be more of a general type of company where we need to learn as many languages as possible, because people will be just like in this age, people are more multilingual in multiple languages, human languages too. So I try to be like more of like a crypto zombie. But there is one book, and it's discontinued, but it's interesting enough that like there is something called Manga Guide to Databases. I really love manga. And what was interesting is this was kind of like really good materials in college. And I actually bought this book, and there's a lot of series like they do like stats, data analysts, but they were discontinued, but it was only in 2012. A lot of times I thought like that was weird because it was really great. And a lot of people here, if you're curious, that this book was actually more digestible during this time, where a lot of times people had visual devices, phones, they would be more susceptible to this type of material. So I thought this was great in 2012 or 2009, but it was, now it should be probably you should buy it. It's on Amazon too, but as it goes, it later on, these comics was kind of like a safe haven. It made the pretty much information digestible just by just reading the panels. And I thought, thinking like, well, if this is kind of like my season one, why don't I just make a mobile app? And I tried that, and these are the screenshots, and they were kind of going through, trying to explore the wonders of Web3 using comic books step by step. And then I thought maybe I did need to be more public about it. And I really wanted to make sure that these characters, can I make a identity to a programming language and make it into a adventure game or a story? I think everyone can see like pretty much this is Python. Can you actually provide a personality like Monty? And I started doing also YouTube videos and making code with Corgis, cute and informative, try to do shorts. And my goal was to make as much assets as possible. And then this is kind of like the season 2. What have I done over 2022 and what I'm going to do now, right? So hope this is pretty interesting. But in the new year, 2023, the coming soon is that I created like a site. So this is the URL where it's Corgis.xyz. And I've been extremely busy over the year because I have like a bunch of students. So I started thinking like maybe make a platform. So this isn't what I've been building. It was pretty much like learn JavaScript in the cutest and most informative way and making it easy for newcomers to learn and think like a coder by converting challenging concepts in comic book like lessons and playing interactive puzzle games. So I wanted it to be a digital and non-digital product. And it's kind of very similar like learning languages or wallets or any type, maybe concepts, data structures, algorithms, and try to make something like pretty much a panel. So this is what I've been working on throughout the year, trying to make a PDF of just a comic book and tell a story, right? So like how you set up your MetaMask in a comic book way. And as I go through, I'm still building, maybe more in a web view. Season 1, people ask like, is there a web application? And now there is. It's just I'm just adding more content as I can. And I started thinking maybe if I can give it things to a kid physically, I can also provide it digitally as well. So learned how to create QR codes and actually make these interactive comic books more digital so that they can play like games on their phone, right? So if you're really curious, these are kind of like I'll also will give you these slides if you are kind of curious. These will have all my socials, but as we go through, like there's like a quote, like learning is not child's play. We cannot learn without pain. And as I tried this out, I started testing it on like a bunch of students and see like if they really like the visuals, and they did. And these are people who are in their careers and they have no expectations, and they figure out that it's better to be visual and actually learn it through kind of like animations or kind of like as a comic book. And this might be a quote like learning is definitely not a mere imitation nor the ability to accumulate or regurgitate fixed knowledge. It's just a process, and discover the process without an end. And I want to try this to make sure that later on, these are what I'll display would be some snippets of the samples of the comics I made, which was like, how do you make JavaScript, how you display it step by step as much as possible, or using analogies like how you break the problem down. I know that it seems like beginner level, but a lot of times we're not in, like a lot of people are beginners when they're in this field. And this is kind of like the code that I should tell, or DevNTell, right? So var, like you can see here that I try to break it into smaller pieces and step by step. And I think people need to be handholded first so then they can grow, right? So as an example here, there's more to these comics, but it actually helps a lot of students go through. And I also will demonstrate that this is the site. And we also have our social. So if you just go to Corgis.xyz, you can see here that we will later on, we'll have levels in Python where you can actually play comics and shops, and you could connect your wallet if needed, but we wanted something more of like later on, maybe sign in, email if needed. And then we'll have levels or games or puzzles through the future. So I hope you enjoy this. I'll probably, it's hard because then I would probably give you guys the comic. So I'll give that through a link. And then if you want to learn more, probably try to follow us on pretty much Corgi.xyz. These are all our socials. So take a look at those as well. And we're trying to expand it. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, as well as Discord if needed. So I think that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, that was awesome, Drew. Yeah, gang, if you have any questions, please do comment in the chat on the right-hand side, and I will ask on your behalf. But I do have a couple. So you mentioned that you shared this content with students. Like, what age range were your students?
Okay, a little bit more background. So in this, and maybe my students will be watching this, I'll probably share it in this class. Currently, I am, these students are ranging as kind of no background. So they're around probably in their early 20s to their like probably 40s. So in this window, I stress tested enough that it was like around 150 students. And how do you keep them? The problem with me was giving slides and just showing them like just instructions does not count. So in giving them a guidebook and a manual actually did. And some of them had no experience and some of them barely. They did tutorial hell and they wanted more of like a better better process. So for me, I wanted to make sure that I provided a visual guidebook. So just like if someone instructor will give you a textbook, I give them a comic book, right? And that gave them a better sense. But later down the road, I will be making, so if you're curious of like what I'm going to be doing next year or this year, is now just making something like a video game speed run. I'll tell my students to ask me what you want me to build, and I'll speed run it through of how to build it. And in the Corgis suit, I don't know, this thing right here. And then they loved the video, but they used the comic books as supplemental comics. And that's kind of like the goal, was to create something like that. The hard part was I wasn't in a physical classroom with them, but to actually see that I created a guidebook, and I'm teaching online. So my Zoom is like 150 students. so it became like I'm a CEO to a class that I did not expect. So I thought like it's a smaller size, but I tested it and see it fit them, and they seem like they pretty much love it because I don't have any complaints from my inbox.
Nice. Always a good thing.
Yeah, like but it, yeah, and then they are also parents, and they would probably give it to their kids too. So that was kind of like a very, very interesting thing. And they said that the brand was pretty good and set. Yeah. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
And are the comic books both digital and like physical, or is it only digital copies at this point?
So this is a good question right here, is that they will be both. So a little bit more interactive. So you would think of it as kind of the comics would be digital products that I would just sell as PDFs, but they will have QR codes underlaying. So then when you scan them, they will just go to the pretty much web app, and you will see that it's just like, oh, it's interactive. There's puzzle games. So I wanted a bridge between it, because making the content and no product, you just make a lot of content, and then it's like, it doesn't verify a lot of things. But if you have both, like you have the non-digital and digital. So the goal would be like pop-up books, make the pop-up book and then have a QR code, and then go from there and scan the QR code, and then you have it on your app and you play around with it. Or just go online and you could see a digital, pretty much go through the web app and watch the comic itself. So similar to like if you have like a manga, you can read it physically or you can read it online, right? But they're both the same content. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But the web would be more interactive, that you can click, interact with it. Probably interact it in a way that it would be very beneficial. But I see a huge problem, because a lot of people are not in the space. So they feel they have a lot of imposter syndrome, that they cannot do it unless they figure out like a certain niche of their learning. So there's times where things have to be broken down to like their elementary school level, but some people do not go that far, because it's so really difficult to visualize everything. It just doesn't happen often. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, often people love that synergy of having like visual content as well as like hands-on. So yeah, I'm not surprised that this type of thing is taken off with people.
Yeah.
And do you foresee yourself strictly focusing in on just like teaching people to code, or do you foresee like an opportunity to kind of go beyond just like coding and introduce like perhaps like teaching like younger students like math or something like this with this type of approach?
Yeah, so it's kind of very similar. In my I already thought about that, and like as an example, like teaching math would be fine, but I'm not like a math like I'm not like I could, but as languages grow, and I think I really rather hit that market where like even the creator of Python will say Python will be legacy code. What is the next thing? And I think I also need to provide like other topics. There's a lot of concepts that people need to break down and understand, like how things work under the hood, and also like why they work as well. And later down the road, I'm focusing on like programming languages, and that's kind of like my big hurdle. And then after that, I start thinking like, okay, data structures or algorithms, because some people ask about that. And then there will be more into these off-topic things like kind of like flashcards, like people want to learn like about data. So it's kind of like more of a general sense, like you need a general knowledge. But my reasons why comic books will work is that my original goal from the beginning, and these were years back, was I had a idea like we all use documentation in some way, some form, and how would it have been like how much would it be worth if I converted all that into a comic book, right? Like Python documentation or JavaScript documentation, it's very just like it's very overwhelming when they see a manual and then you convert it to a textbook and you're like nope.
Yeah.
So if you get into like a comic and it's like a, I don't know, 16 series comic, then yeah, like the full Calvin Hobbes or Peanuts or even Marvel comics series from start to finish, they provide, and then you will just re-update the issues, right? And I think that's that, and tech always will grow and increment. And if I do math, then I could, but I think it's better to just go from that technology side, because I think maybe as a base, maybe like an intro or basics, then I would do that. But for me, and like programming languages come and go, they get updated, they get refactored, and then you add new issues. So that's kind of for like, I thought about that, like, wow, it's like an ongoing marathon series of your childhood.
Yeah.
It never ends.
Never ending comic book. Yeah.
That's like a never ending comic book. So it's very endless. And I keep thinking that, well, I wish like for me, I didn't have any intent to even go through making my own company. I didn't really. I just wanted to just like work, do my side hustle. But I found out that it just takes one person, one user, and they just really want it. So back in like when I'm selling stickers off the street, and I said like, you want to buy a sticker? They'll buy it. I'm like, really? I'm more shocked, but they're more happy.
Yeah.
And then, and you're like, okay, like they're willing to pay like money for this. I'm like, okay, I may have something. So you don't validating your ideas unless you have like a person that would have intent to say like, oh, they really love the product. And then I figured that looking at it, I'm like, well, how far can I go? And for me, like testing it on like my own sandbox, a bunch of students, and then seeing like they will work. So like the next, maybe in 2023, I will be creating, you probably will see a lot of content where I have like a speed run of building stuff in the suit, and then have a platform where it's just learning all the supplemental platform where people can just go and just get the information. So, yeah.
That totally resonates. It's just like, as soon as you see like somebody benefiting from your fruits of labor, and it's just like, it makes a difference in their life, you're like, oh wow, this is pretty neat. And it gives you like a whole new drive to kind of just like keep pushing forward. And yeah, I mean, it's that same kind of feeling is what keeps me coming back to this field of software development and technology as a whole. It's just like the impacts that it can make on people's lives is very inspiring, and like it continues to kind of push, I would say, probably everybody in this field to kind of keep doing what they're doing and like stay afloat. But
I think like personally, like we have a generation that, and this is more of like a observation, you will have a generation that could be really good at sharing a lot, very transparent. So you'll have a generation that would just use like TikTok to share a lot of things. And then you have a generation that's like more conservative of like, these are the instructions, this is what you're going to do. They're really good followers, right? And I see that later on, that when you're going to be working with them. So there must be, for example, comic books didn't work when I was in college. Everyone was able to read and comprehend. and we didn't have YouTube or videos. But now people use YouTube and videos as a learning supplement. And then now they're more visual. So if you give them like a new generation a textbook, they're not going to comply. Right. So then even a teacher, he was teaching math, and I saw this. It was pretty crazy. He was making comics for millennials. They did not like it. They rather just read the book, read the concepts and follow the instructions and go through. And then when he had a new generation, they were more prone for devices, and his comic books was a good hit. And you even can see factors where like even the best top box movies are comic books. so then that became more mainstream, and you can see like people are now more visual than they ever thought. And that's their supplement because they've been exposed to them that much. Like textbooks was one, but now videos, you can just search and find it, watch it, and then that's how you digest information. And I needed something like, well, I don't want to be like a traditional like textbook and this is it, read the docs, that's fine, but it's not going to be scalable in the next couple of years, 10 years or 15 years, because everyone is going to be like, what's the video? Oh, use ChatGPT 3. Right? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, like I have to adapt to times of like how you optimize people to learn and make the right choices if they're going to be in this field, right?
Yep.
So,
100%. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole like slew of opportunity in this field, and like you said, most people now are visual learners. Like I've even run into instances where I presented people documentation with like a whole bunch of text, and I'm like, oh, this is too much in one shot. I don't know if I'm interested in a topic before I like watch a quick YouTube video on it, and then I figure out if I want to deep dive. So it's total shift in people's perceptions on how to learn, for sure.
Yeah, and that perception hasn't changed since the dawn of education, and it becomes a point where now we have to find better, innovative ways of just making sure that people can learn the stuff. So that's kind of like Corgis.xyz. And I'll be like experimenting throughout the year for this 2023 and seeing that what can I offer and what do people like. A funny story is that when I did Code with Corgis, I was making so much content that when when I was at this hackathon, I met a person, but she knew my brand before she knew my face.
Oh, wow.
Nice. And that was the same hackathon me and Narb actually went. And was kind of shocking. I was like, they knew. And then 2 actually female engineers or developers actually came up to me. They knew the Corgi sigil more than they knew actually me in the red hat. So that was kind of very eye-boggling, saying like, wow, people actually like know me. And it does take some time, just from a little bit of it just takes that one person to see like, yeah, you're on the right track.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to miss a fella in a big Corgi suit.
Yeah, I only had Corgi patches so then they just
that's right.
Yeah, so it was pretty funny. Yeah. So when I just came and I wore a Corgi patch, and people were like, I know you. And then when I go to other hackathons, they'll look at my sigil and it's like, oh, you're the guy who gave me the sticker. And then they'll know me based on those memories. And those like very disconnected to what I saw. I'm like, really? I'm memorable? But it just takes that little like icon that will make sure that like, oh, you have something there. So
power of branding, man.
Yeah, power of branding. Yeah.
Exactly.
Took a while.
Yeah, all great things take time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so unfortunately we are at time. But this has been wonderful, Drew. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us that update and recap of all the things Corgi.xyz. So I will be dropping the links for the POAPs in this chat here. So I don't know how this is going to work. Maybe the bots will have their field day with the spreadsheet. Yes, but we'll see. But just for the audience and perhaps yourself as well, Drew, just wanted to make you aware that the Developer DAO has fundraising operators in Chuck and Wickest who are available to assist anybody who is looking for advice on budgeting, applying for grants, and they'll even schedule one-on-one time with you to go over your budgets and grant applications and help you refine until you're ready for that next step. So there is a Notion doc that I will also drop in this link, but I suggest that everybody who is interested in any type of grant funding, definitely check them out. And they have a bi-weekly or weekly, I forget the cadence, but they have a session for people that is open to any and all in the server. So definitely check that out if you have the chance. And with that, I want to wish everybody a very happy Friday, happy weekend, and we will see you here next week.
Yeah. Thank you, Nar, for having me.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, all. Yeah, no problem. All right. See y'all.